Hey, I'm Megan, and I'm a published author, professional writer, and a bookworm. On this channel, I have nothing to sell you. I'm just here to share my journey, and hopefully you learn something new. Writer's block, we all experience it. So today let's talk about a few ways you can possibly get through it and get back to writing. These are things that have worked for me in the past. Now, before we get to some tips, let's back up. First, what I like to do is consider the source of my writer's block. For me, writer's block can happen for a number of reasons. When I'm super tired, the creativity just doesn't flow. When I'm sad, I have a hard time being creative. When my anxiety is really bad, I get racing thoughts, none of which are productive, so that makes it really hard for me to focus. Start here because alleviating the source might be all you need. If you're anxious, like I am sometimes, you can try a guided meditation or journaling or go for a walk, something to calm you down. If you're running on very little sleep, sometimes you just need to step away. Your body is tired. It can't be creative. I know that these are kind of really simple examples, but I wanted to at least start there. If you already know what the cause of your writer's block is, you can hopefully solve it. But what if nothing is wrong and you just don't have any good ideas? That's when writer's block is really tricky. So here are a few concrete things that I've tried that have really helped me get back to creating. Tip number 1, consume content. Read a book, watch a show or a movie. If you enjoy art, go to a museum, listen to music, consume anything. But the trick here is to consume it actively, not passively. So here's what I do. I'm always reading, but when I get stuck with my own writing, I will read something else, very often in the genre that I'm writing in, and I'll ask myself, what do I like about what I just read? What kept me flipping to the next page? What didn't I like? I'll talk this out even with just myself, or I might write it down in my journal or wherever, pointing out what I did and didn't like in what I just read or watched or listened to. Sometimes it carries over very nicely to my own work and helps me look at it in a different way. Try to be specific, that really helps me. One thing I struggle with in my writing, and I will get stuck on this for days and weeks, is trying to build tension within a chapter and end on a nice little cliffhanger, even a baby one. If I read a book or watch a movie and they do a good job of that, I won't just say, well, it had a nice cliffhanger. I'll think about, what was it about this cliffhanger that had my jaw on the floor? Why was the tension in the scene or movie or whatever so magnetic? When you can identify these things in other works, it helps you recreate them in your own work. Tip number 2, create anything, literally anything. If you're a writer, you are a creative person, and there are other creative pursuits that you can try. I'm not telling you to pick up a new hobby, but sometimes creating in a different way gets the juices flowing again. I'll do arts and crafts. I love diamond painting. My husband bought me a sketchbook and pencils for Christmas. I'll crochet. It can be anything that requires you to create. Anything. You can cook, you can build something, like with tools. You might very well find that being creative in another arena unblocks you in your writing. Tip number 3, skip ahead. I wish I had done this sooner because it was a game changer for me. In my last video on how I use Scrivener, I talk about how the tool makes it easy for me to skip around in my novel, which I used to refuse to do. Prior to this, I had to write sequentially. My very best friend, he told me months ago that he skips around when he's writing, and I remember thinking, my brain just can't do that. Well, I learned my lesson. My brain can do it, and should have been doing it a while ago. Writer's block can have me stuck on a chapter or a scene, like I said, for weeks or months, and I finally realized, don't just stand there, do something. Last week I was stuck in the second act of my manuscript. I skipped to the third act and knocked about half of that out in one day. I was on a roll, man, it was good, and it was one of those moments where I was writing and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. It turned out really good, for real. But here's the even cooler part. Now, remember how I talked about in this video that I struggle with building tension and conflict as the story progresses? Here's the thing. I already had a pretty good idea of how I wanted my story to end. Once I started writing that, it helped me better visualize how I can build the tension earlier on so that my characters can end up where I need them to. By putting it down on paper, I saw okay, this is my climax, my resolution, my third act. This is where my characters land, and this is where they are right now. I have to get them from here to here. That is way less nebulous than just, how can I build tension? I know that the idea of writing in order is very attractive because it's so neat and tidy, but the writing process, the creative process, isn't always neat and tidy. If this feels against your nature, I get it, but just try it. You might end up loving it, like me. Tip number 4, switch from the plot to the character. This is kind of an extension of the previous tip, but I'll explain. When I'm working my way through a manuscript, I'm thinking, what needs to come next? That might mean a scene with my main character, or not. So, as a lot of writers do with their manuscripts, I'm going back and forth between different people, different characters. Sometimes I end up stuck because I know I don't want to stay on the main character, but I also don't know where I want to turn to next. So what I'll do sometimes is switch from working through the plot overall to working through the arc of one specific character. This might mean I'm skipping ahead, but that's okay. I would have needed to write those scenes anyway. And kind of how I explained in the previous tip, writing something later on in the story can help you get unstuck earlier on. Tip number 5, I have to include this because sometimes it's so necessary. Walk away. Rest, take a break, cut yourself some slack. I have a full-time job. I'm a freelance writer on the side. I work out a few times a week. I'm married with 2 dogs and a house to take care of. Life is busy. I'm busy. You're busy. It's okay, necessary even, to take breaks. There will be days when you just can't force it, and that's okay. I'd love to know if you have any other tips for overcoming writer's block. If you do, just drop me a comment. And as always, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you never miss my new content. See you later.